Hi,
Hel-
Greg.
Hello, Hugh. How's it going today?
All right.
Are you going to tell me where the moon's at tonight?
No.
Hugh told me I was going to get to speak tonight about our new book about Hugh, uh,
What?
and it really is going to be close to 1,000 pages. So we're almost done with the editing process. We've been holding on to it for quite some time, and uh, this girl though she does a fabulous job. She's the only this editor that I use, only company I've come across that actually does what they say they're going to do. So I'm so tired of the American companies. We tried to edit through some. I tried a company in San Francisco. They did a terrible job. uh, I end up having to pay that much again to this girl to fix it, and she works by herself but does a great job. She came recommended to me through through an actual New York Times bestseller, Chakraborty. So I have her book here somewhere. I don't know if I have it next to me or anyway, probably have it upstairs. But anyway, I have her book too, and she actually came on Facebook and said, "No, you can trust this girl. She, even though she's from Africa." Which normally gives you pause, because there's so many scammers and that sort of thing. But she spent a good amount of money having her do things, and she always does them. And she does a great job. So she will be finished with our new book here on Hugh Squier, which will be called The Real Bottom Line. And what's the rest of it? You gave it a big title. You gave an
On the
extra,
Oakland County child killings, Jimmy Hoffa, JFK murder leading to 9/11.
yes. And all of that is explained
And
immensely.
Tim McVeigh was my neighbor with John Nichols for 30 years. When I moved to the West Coast, Nichols' daughter moved next to me with a family that murdered John Lennon.
And see, stuff like that is why we can't just give it the name, The Real Bottom Line. I mean, we want people to look at the cover and go, wow, this is going to be worth the
She
the
was
price of
married.
buying a
She was
1,000 page
she was
book.
married to him, and he died. He's no longer alive, but he died next door to me,
Hmm.
and I can't remember his name.
But that's just a tiny fraction of what this book is about. Any one of the subjects that have happened in your life could be a book in and of themselves. We could write book after book after book, fill a library of just things related to your life and your history. And maybe I will. I know that I have at least two more books coming. One will not be about your life specifically. It'll be more about the subject of the first book, like here's a little piece of the first book that I wrote. It's a close up, historical mysteries, and I do introduce Hugh Squire in that book because when I first made this book, I was just getting to know you. I was already in the process of making it, and I said, just in case something happens, I at least want to have something in print
I really
about
changed. I really changed your whole view on everything in America, didn't I?
you. I had no clue how things worked, and it was fascinating because I was really searching at the time to try to understand, looking for how what. Okay, basically, I was looking and saying, I know that things like the Illuminati and that sort of thing are rubbish, but I don't know what the real story is. And so there was a hole, and I didn't know how to fill it. I knew there was more reality to who's actually doing
The
what.
people who founded the revolution against King George, they used the Masonic lounges and temples in England to plan the war.
Right.
And then once the war was over, they left it.
Yeah, most of them did not remain Masons. A few did, but yeah. George Washington got out of the Masons. But yeah, right, because that's one part of the book right there is how they used a little bit of Masonic code, if you will, Masonic.
They used the Masonic halls that were in existence to plan the revolution.
Right. And so they had to incorporate those symbols and
And
symbology into the
once they threw King George out of the country, they all left the
right.
lodges.
Right there beside the sword here at Campus Martius here in Marietta, that
Your
roof that
enemies tell you that I'm the Illuminati and I don't even belong to the Masons Lodge.
right, right. But George Washington's Masonic apron and Masonic cups and plates and stuff like that are sitting right beside the sword that he gave to Rufus Putnam, who was married to Fuller, whose father was married to Fuller, who was one of your ancestors. So, and as I find it just absolutely fascinating in that same cemetery that Buckminster is one of the people buried there, where he's and you're related to Buckminster Fuller, which the inventor, and that fascinates me. And we've talked about that, and that's also in the book. But
I'm related to everything that's gone on in this country.
one of the things you told me in the past, Hugh, that really kind of helped me get my bearings for like how the world really works. You hear the BS stories about the Illuminati and the capstone and that sort of thing and the all-seeing eye. And the liars out there take that symbology and create complete nonsense with it. However, you said the cap is just ASCAP. That's the top of the pyramid, if you will, with music and with movies and producing, and those are just the people and the writers and the producers that actually make things for
That's
America.
what shapes your country.
Right.
ASCAP is the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers. I'm a publisher member at ASCAP.
That was one of the early things you told me that started to get my brain in order to go, oh, so the people who these are, then you started giving me names of people that you've worked with and what they do. And then I started seeing how they make movies and music directly related to your life to cover up things that they did. And then when you tie that with the people from the FBI who killed Kennedy, and it just all comes together beautifully, hand in glove, and everything finally makes sense. And it's like, okay, this is the real history of America that has not been told.
They hide it from all Americans and they hide it from the whole world.
And that's how it finally just
And
that 7 years ago or so in
I'm
2017,
I'm
6 years.
Sirhan's family, and I'm Judith Baker's family. Judith Baker married into my family.
Yeah,
And then Osborne kidnapped me and my twin and murdered my twin. And Osborne would wash the kids he would rape.
that's pretty close to where your story starts directly, as a 4-year-old boy. At the time of when Admiral Byrd, who would be an uncle or great uncle of some sort, or second, maybe slightly
Admiral
distant or
Byrd
something.
was my family, my
Yeah,
mother's family.
right.
All
So,
of the people related to me, except one or two, are
well,
all through my mother's family, Gardner, Harris,
Mhm. Gardner,
Washington.
Harris, and Fuller are the three biggest names related to you. And your story starts as a 4-year-old boy, and you're being abducted
I was
at the
kidnapped.
same kidnapped and
I was
put in a
kidnapped with my twin who came back from California with Sirhan's child.
right at the same time, within a few weeks, maybe on the same day even, that Bird was murdered. And
And Trump's election committee, Osborne, murdered my twin, kidnapped me, tortured me, and raped me with four other governors. And Stone cut the bone out of my foot as torture as JFK was murdered when I was 10 or 11.
Mhm.
And the world doesn't know of these things. Trump ran to be president using the people who murdered George Washington's family. That's why he says he's better than George Washington, because his election committee murdered a 4-year-old kid related to George Washington. And this is all truth.
He gives these big kind of hints about how he understands exactly what happened and
L.
how,
Brooks Patterson was in the driveway as they murdered my twin.
right. And he
He
knows all
did
this
he did
stuff.
he did nothing. He didn't even file a murder report.
And that's why he
He
has,
didn't file my kidnap or my torture. And Osborne would beat me across my thighs with 2x4s and physically punch me in the face. Two Osborne brothers. And their mother was in the house. Um, with Long Wallace.
Andrews and Anderson. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were all Confederate officers during the Civil War.
Not they
They
themselves,
all
their
moved, to,
ancestors.
including Graham, who ran Detroit News. He's from South Carolina. They were all Confederate soldiers.
And just like we were talking about ASCAP being the top of the pyramid, I mean, you think about Graham Magazine and being publishers, just like Cheney and Bush's family were publishers. You know, there was a George Bush who was a critic of Edgar Allan Poe, just like your ancestor Margaret Fuller. And, you
Uh,
know, both listed as, these are publishing companies throughout the years in the
my
1800s.
my family made the United States after the Revolutionary War, and then they also made Hollywood.
Right. In Hollywood, right beneath the sign, like we've talked about in other videos, there's Gardner Street, Fuller Street, and
Exactly.
Detroit Street and Clinton Street all coming together right there beneath the Hollywood sign.
My mother's entire family was murdered on Clinton Road
Right.
on Christmas Day. And
And so,
the kids they missed at church, they went back and murdered them at their homes.
and this is where they're acknowledging that they got a lot of their wealth by taking wealth from the founders' families right there on Clinton River Road, stealing the patents and becoming billionaires, founding taking
They
over
stole
the other publishers.
they stole patents for vans, buses, milk trucks, the Fuller transmissions and semis, the geodesic dome.
Hmm.
And
And
then they
all
stole
this,
the WWF stole my trademark. And all of this is in the book
mhm,
in chronological order.
yeah. But all this gave them the ability and power to uh, com have complete monopoly, if you will, over entertainment and industry. And this is why it looks like when somebody says the Illuminati runs the world, well, this is how it looks. This is how they got that illusion. They were able to take that power, and now they do not the Illuminati, but these people that we mentioned by name, people like Osborne and Graham and so forth, that took over Hollywood and media and music. This is how they got that power and influence, and now they don't have any competition for ideas in this country. Is that logical? Is I'm saying that about right?
Yeah, that's correct. And a whole lot more.
Yeah. Well, we also trace it to how,
They stole the WWF stole a trademark from me that was $3 trillion of theft in New York. I was an ASCAP publisher, and they stole my business name, Bottomline. And Steve Austin and McMahon did that. And it's interesting to note that everybody that my twin was murdered on Vance Street, and that's Trump's vice president. Osborne and Stone were his election committee, and they murdered my twin. And on and on and on.
any visits to Detroit on the anniversary
My
of when
third
your
wife
wife
was
was
murdered
killed.
by my third wife was murdered by the Wright family. I told them not to put her on IMView because bikers there planned her murder, and she was in a wheelchair. Bikers and police planned her murder on a 3D chat called IMView. And I had told
I apostrophe M V U E. I'm View, right?
I had told the Wright family not to do that. She couldn't protect herself.
Right.
And there were all kinds of rapists raping women and kids all over the country on View at that time. My first wife, she died Christmas Day. And I say my wife, we were engaged to be married. Her name was Kiki Kissel Nelson. She was Ricky Nelson's family. Um, Mae Musk took over the cover of Maybelline magazine from her family as she was murdered. And then she named Elon Musk, L on Musk, and I was the bottom line. And my uncle always called me the L because I was a line. And gay men torturing and raping me. Uh, and these were all gay men, 5 gay men. And Santa Claus at Divco. And Santa Claus would rape me. A
All
guy,
when you were a little kid at school,
yeah,
you couldn't
a
get
guy
away
by
from
the
it.
name of Ed Rutz, who became a college professor, and he was gay. And she named him Elon Musk, a man sent, as my first wife was murdered Christmas Day, like my mother's family was murdered Christmas Day when she was 7.
And so in this new book, we tie how these South African Nazis and British Nazis, and the Queen was a Nazi married to a an SS guard, how they collaborated with the FBI to take over America, to rape our kids, to steal our wealth, and to perform things like the British invasion, take over all of our media and all of our news. And to this day, they run literally everything that we see and hear comes straight out of the throne of England. And
All the media is owned by England. Uh,
yeah,
you got Epstein, Germany, which was a town Hitler loved. You had
exactly.
Elvis Presley, an Indian, buying Hitler's major a house, shilling, and on and on and on. The Beatles were given to you by uh, Brian Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was selling kids to the presidents and to the Queen's sons, and they run all American news. Why is Fox covering all of America's sports and all of America's elections? We had a revolution against King George.
Right. And not just Fox, all of them. CBS, CNN, ABC.
Yeah, CNN is run by the BBC. Anderson raped me and Cooper raped my daughter. Anderson Cooper 360. Garrett murdered my attorney as my third wife was murdered. And all of these things are in chronological order in your book.
Right.
And it
And
took
by that, they're basically bragging about the theft and telling the world how they did it.
Americans don't care. American Christians put Trump in the White House after his election committee murdered kids in Oakland County, Michigan.
Right.
And I've been posting this for 20 years. How long did you study my life?
So I met you in 2017, not long after you come back from that final trip, where you
7
tried to
years.
go. Yeah.
You
Or,
studied my life and my federal documents for 7 years
right.
to write
Well,
to
six
write the
six
book you
years. Yeah.
wrote.
And so we made lots of recordings, lots of videos. I bought all kinds of books, and I got a whole bunch of them beside me here. You
And
know,
Americans don't watch the videos we make, do they?
no, it just
And they're
seems
all
that
truth,
everyone's
and you
tone
know they're
deaf.
truth.
Mhm.
All our videos are truth, and you know they're truth.
Yeah.
You went to college to become a Baptist minister. So did your wife.
Yeah,
You're,
she went to
you're,
become a teacher. Yeah.
yeah, you went to college to become a Baptist preacher, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, that was my original plan. I thought I could save the world and that sort of thing. But as my views began to mature, I
So
started to understand.
you don't lie to people. And I was raised to be a priest, and I owned a ministry in the Bible Belt in Tennessee where my wives were murdered by
Right.
bikers and police.
Yeah, I'm not here to make a bunch of money and deceive everyone or anything like that. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't lie to people either. Everything that's in the book is complete truth.
Yeah. To the best of our ability, we said everything that we know to be true to the best of our ability. So, it's always possible we made a mistake somewhere, but as far as we know, everything is true that we put in this book. So that's what matters the most. We have a clear intention of telling people what really is, and it'll disturb a lot of people because it's not the history that you'll get anywhere from London's news media.
No, I was the first guy the FBI detained for Jimmy Hoffa's murder.
Right. Where's anybody ever heard that before? They haven't.
Never.
Right.
Miller and Toko and Scherer, they all kept me out of their books on purpose.
All that while your mother-in-law was with Hoffa that day. So,
Yeah, she was having dinner with Hoffa,
mhm.
and Whitey had sold me a car, and I'm not in any book, any movie. They completely pretend I don't exist. And my family surrounded Hoffa, and James Hoffa is married into my family,
Yeah.
but I don't exist. And I'm the first guy that the FBI detained for his murder. And they detained me in front of 6 or 7 neighborhood kids, including 5 of my own, in
Wow.
my Troy, Michigan driveway the day after he disappeared. And that's not even legal in Michigan because you got to be missing 48 hours for
So
a
we
missing persons report to even be made out in Michigan. So they detained me the following day and told me I murdered Hoffa. And I was like 19 years old, raising 5 kids who weren't mine.
so we mentioned all that. We mentioned a chapter on all the times that various people have tried to kill you. If you took your hat off right now, which I doubt I could get you to do, there's a big dent in your head where somebody hit you on the head with a hammer. That was one of the many times somebody tried to kill you. Another time they poisoned you at the airport, and then you saw the pilot drink out of the same cup of coffee, and then the plane went down right after takeoff, killed everybody on board. A great big passenger plane that everyone knows about.
I've been on 2 747s that crashed and lived through it.
Yeah, you weren't on the plane. You were about to get on the plane,
I was
right?
on the plane.
Which one were you on? You weren't on flight 255. You said you collapsed in the
No,
airport. Which was
no.
the one you were on?
When I picked Terry up in Minnesota,
Now that one didn't make the book. See, I didn't know about that one. So,
no, I didn't
uh,
tell.
yeah. So you were actually on one airplane that crashed, and
I
then
was flying to Menominee, Wisconsin, and the closest jet I could get was in Minnesota. So Terry drove to Minnesota and picked me up.
hmm,
I handed her the keys to the Manning properties, and Manning co-created the JFK archives, which are complete BS. My friend in Warren, Michigan, where I was a teacher, Russell, appointed Manning and James Garrison was my alumni in Warren Consolidated. And Warren Consolidated is on Arden Street, and that's Ozzy Osbourne's wife's real name, Arden. And the
That's
FBI
fascinating.
funded my school, my high school, on Arden Street. And they also helped the WWF steal my trademark, hiding me from the world.
Right. And you were taken to Osborne's basement on Hoover Street too, another FBI connection there. Right.
Yeah. And
And
Osborne always ran against my family, Baldwin, to be mayor of Michigan,
And Osborne's
governor,
friend,
governor of Michigan.
Osborne's friend was Anderson, and Anderson was Hoover's lover, FBI
Yeah.
leaders.
And
Yeah,
these people raped me,
right.
tortured and raped me, and murdered my twin. And my twin was brought back from California with Sirhan's child. There's no lie in this.
So we have a chapter that about that too, and the
So
letter that
Tony Tocco, Anthony Tocco, Miller, Sheerhan, George Knapp, these people all wrote books about Jimmy Hoffa, and they all leave me out of the books. And I
which
was the
says
first,
everything we ever need to know about these people are just liars. Just
yeah,
straight up making up a story, cover up
they're
story.
writing
Every single
books
one
to
of them.
make, they're writing books to become millionaires.
Right. And cover up what actually happened every single time. Um, so we have that chapter and about the letter that we wrote to RFK Jr. and to Sirhan in prison, which they've never responded to, but it was interesting what they did afterward. So you'll want to read about that in this
And
book for
you
sure.
wrote to Robert Kennedy Jr.,
Yep.
and his lawyers never responded.
Nope.
But he went to prison and talked to Sirhan and told him he knows he didn't murder his father
Right after that.
after
Yeah.
you wrote him a letter,
Hmm.
but never responded to you or me.
Right. And then started running for president, which I suspect is because he wants access to some records he wants to
The
look
only
at.
reason he ran for president is to make money from Trump.
I think he wants some information too, Hugh. I think he wants to
He's in
delve
Trump.
more into what we
He's in
said.
Trump's cabinet now, and his father and John F. Kennedy were Democrats, and they were solid Democrats, and they were murdered by the Republicans.
So we have that big letter. We also talked about how we called and talked to uh,
Baldwin on the set of Rust.
Baldwin's attorney.
Why did you talk to him?
Because we know that Baldwin was not guilty of intentionally trying to murder Helena Hutchins. And in fact, the person who handed him the gun was Hall's.
And Hall raped me.
And Hall was one of the rapists with Osborne and Anderson and Andrews and Long and Wallace. Right.
And then Hall went on to have uh, Daryl Hall TV in Pennsylvania, where my third murdered wife was born, and my twin's body was thrown. The twin they brought back from California. And the FBI forged DNA and say he's not my twin nowadays, but he is my twin.
Your sister had been married to Baldwin.
Yeah,
And he was murdered, right?
by Rusty Hawthorne. And then Rusty Hawthorne changed his name to Rusty Killen and called me on the phone and told me he was going to kill me next. He
Right.
actually came out to my home and on the West Coast, killed cats, put the blood all over my house. And I went to 5 police stations and reported him. And then
And you believe that's Hall doing all that.
Baldwin was murdered on the set of Rust.
Right.
And he called me on the day he murdered Brian Baldwin, my brother-in-law, in Michigan.
Yeah, so he was calling himself Rusty Killen, and then on the set of Rust, he hands Baldwin a gun that was loaded on purpose.
Yeah,
Right. And so we called the lawyers and explained all this to them, but
they don't care.
that seems insane that they wouldn't care because that's a lot of evidence you'd think they would want to know
Yeah, and I
in a
went to
court
five
case.
police station making reports out with a witness to the phone call.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I call the FBI about murdered kids carried across state lines, they hang up on me, don't they?
Mm.
And I have that with witnesses. I made videos about that with witnesses.
Yeah. So this book's 1,000 pages, and we go back, even at the beginning, we go back and we talk about some of these publishing families and take it all the way back to the Salem witch trials. I mean, it's amazing how all this stuff goes together. And I think the vigilant reader who really tries to understand will
My
simply be mind blown by the reality of everything they haven't been told.
my family was a Supreme Court justice, Fuller.
Another Fuller, right?
Yeah. And the entire California lawyers bar, as they murdered my mother's family and then stole my trademark, also stole my trademark. The entire lawyers bar of California stole my trademark when the WWF and DuPont did.
And we talk a lot about the WWF and Mick Foley and uh, Hulk Hogan talking about the Twin Towers and how all this is related to DuPont and the theft of Bottom Line and why you have Bottom Line events in the WWF. And
They stole my trademark at the same time they stole World Wildlife Federation trademark because they murdered me 3 times that year. I couldn't get on my feet. And when I did get on my feet to sue them, they murdered 3 of my attorneys and 2 judges.
right. And we also talk about this guy, picture of this Time magazine.
My neighbor,
Yep. So I had to go out and buy an old copy. Um, John DeLorean, and that's this is why in Back to the Future, who in
when
Back to
when
the
I
Future
when I
3 has Mayor Hugh of Hughville, which is not a coincidence.
when I stopped the gun and drug trade run by the Senate in 79 and 80, uh, they framed John DeLorean for selling drugs. And he was exonerated eventually in the courtroom.
Right?
And show that cover again.
Okay. Try to hold on here. I have to stand up maybe. No. It's
Just
gonna.
back it up.
Okay. Here, yeah, there we go.
It says the bottom line busted, and it's underlined in red.
Yeah.
And that's Obama's red line in the sand. Do you have Fletcher Neville's book there?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Fletcher Neville was John F. Kennedy's press secretary in the White House.
Right. Oh, here it is. Okay. So again,
My trademark underlined in red.
once again,
And that was Obama from England. That was my stolen trademark underlined in red. And Obama called that his red line in the sand, making fun of me as they murdered my attorney. Garrett at CBS murdered my attorney on the same day they murdered my wife, my third wife.
and
And
see
then
DeLorean in the bottom line, that's why they could tell you about 9/11 and the terrorist scene in Back to the Future.
when I moved out to the West Coast, Garrett signed the inside of my mailbox.
That's pretty amazing and pretty low of
Yeah,
him.
they
Yeah.
and he's CBS, which is Canadian Broadcasting System.
And he was a White House
And
correspondent.
the whole book is filled with little tidbits like this.
Yes.
Russell died at a table at one of my performances. He drank himself to death after his family gave you Manning and James Garrison to run the Warren Commission. And all of these things are in my life. And they had to hide the theft of my trademark bottom line in 30,000 entertainment contracts. And that's when they blew up the Twin Towers. My FBI records were in Building 7. My civil rights case was in the Pentagon. So, do you have anything else to add to this?
Well, the book is big, but think about how much bigger it could have been. Any one of these
I
stories
can,
is a
you know
huge book.
yourself, I can fill libraries with books.
We could go on and on and on and on forever. And we've been making these videos for a long
I could
time,
take
dissecting
each
parts of it.
individual person in my life and write a book about them and how they lied about just JFK's murder.
Yeah. I did intentionally repeat myself a lot in this book, which is partially the reason, but that is so big. But I feel like it was very necessary for people to be able to put all the pieces together in their minds.
Yeah,
So it's intentional to do it.
it spans 150 years.
Yeah. We went back to the Salem witch trials, Hugh. It goes
My
back to
my my
1690 in
family
this book.
my family was with President Lincoln as his guest as Bush shot him.
That was Harris, one of the three
Yeah.
names we said. Your mother was Harris, right?
And then Biden and Kamala Harris just tried to steal my family name. I would have rather Kamala Harris won than Trump because Trump is a child killer.
Yeah,
And I don't think it. I know it.
right. Knowing that is why I could not vote for him again this time. We did the first time, but we hadn't put the pieces together yet. But now that we know what we know, I couldn't vote for him this time. So,
We did. They didn't say the news didn't say that Osborne and Stone were his election
right.
committee.
We didn't know about Osborne and Stone and LG. A lot of the people he has in his cabinet this time, right? That we talked about's in his cabinet
The
now.
people that murdered my wives are all in his cabinet.
Mhm.
Musk, Wright, McMahon.
McMahon, right.
They're
WWF
they're all
again. Right,
billionaires in his White House cabinet.
right, right.
And they murdered George Washington's family.
Mhm.
My
Well,
my second murdered fiance, she created the Head Start program for President Reagan in the 1960s. And she was his role model at Head Start when two off-duty policemen kidnapped her and destroyed her Head Start and CPS office. She was protecting kids on the Great Lakes from being used in the porno industry by the FBI. And they had policemen kidnap her, drive her across 5 state lines, and then they murdered her on a Civil War ranch I bought for her
just that is
in
a huge
Tennessee.
book. Just that by itself. Oh, just hit my desk. Just that by itself could be a huge book.
Yeah, that could be another 1,000-page book very easily.
So, even though this book may not be the cheapest book you could ever buy, it's worth every single penny. People can learn history that you will not hear anywhere else.
Well, they hide my
That
history.
that everyone else that from London's media and they even control the museums. They control history. They control everything that's written and viewed and seen in this country. Their families, your relatives that from your in-laws that hate you and tried to kill you. They run museums to try to hold on to the historical narrative in this
They
country
even
to keep
that
us from knowing any sort of reality.
that still living wife related to Perry and Cook run the museums, and they're Apache Indians, and they even put my children, my real children,
That's
down
right.
as their children on gravestones.
And after all that, they did not like me telling your story. So the only way for you to ever learn the real history of this country is you're going to have to buy this book, or you're going to miss the biggest
You're gonna
truths
miss
that have been hid.
you're gonna miss the backbone of what really happened to JFK in 9/11
Right,
and James Hoffa
right. And my
and the
hope
Oakland
is,
County
Hugh,
child killings.
I see that America is pretty much blind now. And so my hope is tone deaf, completely brainwashed by those that run it from London. But my
I,
hope is that, Hugh, in 200 years, somebody will pick up this old book off of a old dusty shelf somewhere. Some researcher will find it and go, "Oh my gosh, how did this guy know this?" And they'll be influential enough to change the future and say, "Wow, this was known, but it was hidden."
you know, people like President Ford are my family, and his child was killed in Oakland County, Michigan, by Osborne after he took Nixon and Spiro Agnew's place. His real name is King and Gardner,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm the King and Gardner family.
Just like we said, Gardner, right?
And Timmy King was kidnapped off of Gardner Street.
And Gardner was one of the people that came over on the Mayflower. So that's how back
Right.
this far back this family goes.
Yeah, we were the original colony. So
Well, I think that's a good place to stop it. This will be on my website. It will be on Amazon. All these links will be posted when they're available. We thought maybe this was going to be the last video, but I think you're planning on making more in the future, Hugh.
yeah, we'll make some more full moon videos.
Well, very
But
good.
I
So,
feel it's a waste of time because all of America doesn't watch them. And
yeah,
all of our videos are filled with truth.
yeah,
I
yeah,
was raised to be a priest. I owned a ministry in the Bible Belt. Greg Bowe is a Baptist minister from college, and everybody thinks we're lying. And you
yeah.
studied my federal documents for 7 years. I even have the hospital reports from my third wife being raped and murdered and dismembered in the hospital, don't I?
Yeah, yeah, we have all that too.
And the police didn't file murder charges, did they? In Tennessee,
No
two,
obituaries.
three police departments didn't file murder, dismembered, murdered women murder reports. Three of them. One told me, well, we're just going to leave it up to God in Johnson City. The one in Greene County told me, it's not my fault the federal government is corrupt. I'm not going to file a murder report. And
And
Johnson
then
and Pigeon Forge, they just totally denied it.
and then your lawyer got killed and all the police got arrested for doing drugs.
My lawyer was
It's
murdered.
unbelievable. Right.
My lawyer was murdered on his way to the district attorney's office,
Yep.
and we had met for a month. When my wife's ears were cut off, and they used her advocate's phone to call me and brag about cutting her ears off in a hospital, I hired an attorney to file her murder charges. And they murdered him on his way to the district attorney's office.
So there's all that and more in this book. So it is worth your time, money, and investment in reading it,
It's the real
getting to know
history
it.
of America.
That it
It's
is.
the real history that the presidents hide from you.
Mhm.
The presidents and the FBI, they hide all of this from you. I was married to my third wife in a wheelchair by Donald Trump's major in the Air Force at a Methodist church. And everybody in the church was in the Air Force as they recalled Selfridge Air National Guard. And that's where I grew up at. We can end it there, Greg.
I think we should. I think
I'll
that's
send it
pretty
to you and you can
concise.
put it up on YouTube.
Very good.
Good luck with your book. I'm not taking any revenue from your book, am I?
Nope, not a bit.
I
And
gave
I'm
it to
not.
you. I gave it to you for nothing, and I wish you luck.
Well, like I said, my goal is to buy enough copies to send it all over the country as best I can, so somebody will find it 200 years.
Donald Trump is going to end education department, so you'll have to send it to every state. And the only way you'll get it into schools is to send it to every school in the country.
Yeah.
And that's what ending the education department means. And he's doing this to hide my twins' murder, George Washington's family. And so the FBI can't do to his kids what was done to me. He's protecting his own kids.
That makes sense.
Take care.